Hello, this is Hypersonic again. This is the fourth broadcast. We are still on the air and going strong, and this time in full HD. Now, this battle is a macro versus kind of a micro. What you'll see here is that my macro actually outdoes I love this name, Wiki Bizob, or Wacky Bob, or whatever you want to call him. Good stuff. Basically, I just outdo his micro simply because I just kind of kept my macro going. There will be lapses, mainly because he does get a couple sneak attacks on me, and I just kind of take him one at a time. One of the big focuses for this recording are trade-offs. It's sort of like guns or butter. You can't be doing everything at once, at least not until you have 3 or 4 bases going. In this one, you'll see that Bizob here wants to try and kind of whittle me down and use certain gimmicky tactics, while I'm trying to build more of a straightforward army and kind of figure out what he's doing. The trade-off pretty much was that he didn't get his expansion up, and because of that, because I survived all of his little gimmicks, I pretty much beat him with pure force in the end, even though I traded armies a couple times. Now, what you just saw back at my base was another form of proxy. It's also a cannon rush. Both can be done at the same time, which is pretty awesome for a Protoss player. It can also keep me from expanding quickly. Unfortunately for me, I didn't see this at all. And when I did, it was too late. I almost lost an entire expansion because of that. That's 400 minerals. That's a lot of stuff. That's like a whole bunch of Marines, Marauders, a couple tanks, you know. It all adds up in the end. Here comes my SCV after scouting out basically every other half of the map except his base. There he goes, building the cannon. I didn't see him building the cannon there, otherwise I might have pulled my SCV out just a little bit sooner. He kind of leaves it there, which gave me kind of vital time to see what he was kind of building there. It was pretty cool. I was like, hey, well, oh crap. And there we go, and then the cannon was up, and yeah, there goes my SCV. Good times. Got my Marines in their bunker there. They're settled, comfortable, because that's their choice, and they're waiting. Got my tanks going out. I'm starting the research pretty soon here. There we go, chrono boosting. Throughout most of this, if you look at the queue at the top left, I'm pretty much building units a lot faster. I'm just pretty dang good at my macro these days. The only thing I really have trouble with is harassment, and you'll see pretty soon that he's going to start doing some interesting tactics with Stalkers and with Dark Templars. Now here's where the big trade-off starts to happen. A little bit of foreshadowing. I'm starting to build my next command center. This is my expansion. I am getting ready for the mid-game. The Protoss player decides not to build a second expansion, which kind of lets him focus on his army a little bit more, but at the same time, he can't keep up with me later in the game. Now in a second here, I'm going to bring up the supply tab, and when that happens, you're going to see me sort of pulling away in general. In very basic little measures. Usually the big giveaway is supply at the top under our name banners, but I have a larger army as well as more workers already. So by this point, I'm starting to just kind of outproduce him. Look at that, my minerals are higher, my gas is getting higher, my second expansion is almost done here, and I'm going to be in lots of trouble as soon as I send it over there, mainly because all those cannons are just going to start targeting it, and it's 4 cannons, so it's not like it's not going to eat its health away very quickly. There I go, floating it on over, unsuspecting anything. My army's sitting right there, luckily, and I managed to sort of get them out in time to sort of stop what's going on. It's kind of funny. I keep telling myself, you know, maybe I should scout my expansion and maybe get my army out there just a little bit faster. Another trade-off here. If I get my army out faster, then I relinquish the high ground that my tanks and my ranged firing can do. When I put them on the low ground, it actually helps save my expansion more because it forces them to encounter my army before getting anywhere near my workers. Oh, and there we go. It's on fire. I thought I was actually going to lose this, but it gets just out of range there. I get my SCV there just to repair it in time. It was beautiful. I was very proud of myself that I didn't waste 400 resources. That would have been very, very scary, especially going against someone who's trying to harass me the entire game. Up on the queue, the Protoss player is finishing Blink right there. Blink is just very, very devastating when they get in between your tanks and your army and they start immobilizing your forces. It kind of sucks, but it's kind of beautiful at the same time in a weird way. I'm just cleaning up the expansion here. As soon as I get that cannon down, I'm going to float my expansion over. A logical procession of things going on. It's beautiful. And there he goes. He is building more gates. He's building more cannons. He's starting to watch his back door. He's obviously not a complete total noob, even though we're both in Bronze League. Good stuff. Now, one thing Bizov starts to do is he's gathering his stalkers and he's going to make a warp prism. What he's going to do is, instead of just directly transporting the stalkers, he's going to drop them into my base via gateways. And that way, he can just sort of drop troops wherever he pleases. This is a tactic I'm still getting used to, mainly because in all my noob-tasticness, I haven't been really assaulted by this attack very much until recently. And you'll see that he drops it behind these little smoke vents, and because of that I can't really see it. I'm just showing you what I can see here. I see his army, and there's the Void Prism being built right there. I just missed it. I actually didn't notice it at all. I probably wouldn't have responded to it, actually. But after watching the replay, I was like, you know, Void Prisms actually have a use. It's amazing. And there he goes into the clouds. I'm going to show you my line of sight pretty quick here. He sets it up so that he can start teleporting units in. If he had kept it there, I probably wouldn't have noticed it, actually. That probably would have been a win for him if he had figured it out that I didn't really know the value of a Void Prism. There you see the field where he can warp his units in. I call shenanigans. He's going to try and take out my base. As you can see, none of my units can see it past the line of sight blockage of the vents. Luckily, my army size and my supply size are larger than his at this point. There he goes, building up his forces. Pretty soon he's going to start building a Dark Shrine, and he'll start building Dark Templars with that Dark Shrine. Another logical progression there. There he has 2 Stalkers. He's going to warp in 2 more before pushing here. I still can't see anything. I had no idea it was coming. You'll see what happens here as he pushes out in just a second. Sends the Void Prism back to the base.
So hey Bob, what are you doing today? I was thinking about attacking some Terrans. Oh, it's time to go.
And there they go. They attack my workers. I was caught unawares. My army is actually slightly outside of my base right now, so I have to drag them back in here. Luckily, I actually didn't lose that many workers, or as many workers as I thought. I pretty much saved about half of them, which is pretty good for being caught unaware from this attack. And I kill all of his stalkers. Around this time, he actually gets his little scout up in the air above my troops. And because of that, he can see everything there, and he sees when I push out. And this is going to play a big role simply because I'm about to make a drop. There is his observer, as you can see, like I said before. And when I drop, he won't be caught totally unawares like I was, which kind of sucks, but at the same time, I sort of keep him in check. Mind you, he doesn't have an expansion, so he can't rebuild everything that he loses, like I can. Now we're going to watch this kind of happen from his angle at first, and then I'm going to rewind it real quick to show you what happens from my angle and how I see it. So he sees me kind of gathering my troops into my medevacs with his observer over there, and he's already kind of preparing for it. He knows that something's going to happen pretty soon. I can't just sit there in a vacuum in a stagnant world. Building plenty of pylons so I can't destroy his base. There he goes. He's positioning his army. My guys are about to drop, and here they come. There they go. They're on the ground, and they're losing. It's pretty visible that my troops aren't going to survive this, unfortunately. I could see that. I probably should have pulled a few out, but I was stubborn, and I was like, let's win this battle, even though we're losing. And then, yep, there my last tank goes. But I destroyed most of his stalkers, and he only has a couple siege units left. And here we go. I'm about to magically jump back. This is the power of replay. As you see me right there. Boom. There we go. All my troops are loading in, loaded up, and we're going to head back down there to try and kick some Protoss butt. And there we go. Now here's a little critique of my performance here. So we're going to do this drop, and the whole point of a drop is to sort of get your troops in position as fast as possible to kind of keep the counterattack from destroying everybody. Now I didn't quite do that, although I did it well enough that I destroyed most of his army. So I killed the pylon instead of putting my tanks in siege mode right then. If they were in siege mode already, that army probably would have been gone, but instead they were even firing the entire time for most of the battle. And with that, they clean up my army and the medevacs go home a little lonelier than they were before. However, if you were paying attention, I actually supply locked him during that time. That's a pretty big one there. As far as macro goes, if he had more supply, then he probably could have expanded at this time and gathered more forces to try and repel me, as well as maybe get more map control. But instead of doing that, he started to go for Dark Templars. If you look at the supply tab up at the top left, you'll notice that when nothing's going on, I am cranking out units. Marines and Marauders first, tanks usually next, medevacs, if I need some more, I'll build some more. And if you look at the Protoss player's queue, he kind of has a pylon, maybe some weapons upgrade. Really, throughout most of the battle, he doesn't build that much, and I was kind of wondering why. He actually had the tactical advantage in so many situations, and we traded armies, so he could have, expanded more or tried to take advantage of the situation. Here's another example of how the macro won out. I only sent about half of my army down there. The rest of it is sitting right below his base, so he can't leave even if he wants to. His resources are a little bit higher than mine at this point, but I'm still just kind of cranking out SCVs, repairing my other base. I go for the high mineral expansion there. Now, it will be kind of ill-fated, he'll spot it, unfortunately, and actually get it down before I really have time to do anything. I have to move it out of the way. It doesn't actually get destroyed. Again, I saved 400 minerals. I'm so proud. Bizop had a pretty decent scouting game. He kept throwing his observer out there. I wasn't smart enough to put a turret up, so he just kept taking advantage of the fact that he could see where my army was, and all of my units, and my expansions, and everything else. Right now, he's actually building a Dark Shrine to start instigating some more problems for me and my base and my troops and everybody else. I send my army all the way around so they wouldn't just get picked off by his army on the high bluff. I didn't do that the entire time, but this one time with that large package of troops there, I just wanted to make sure that they were unharmed on the way. As far as tactics, he's going to bust out his Warp Prism, and that's how he's going to teleport in his first Dark Templars. And I'm going to be caught totally unawares. I actually have a pretty fast Dark Templar reaction there. I actually upgraded my second expansion so I could see them. I really do not like invisible units. I don't think anybody really does when they're being used against them. But he was trying to snipe my resources, which if he could have pulled it off, may have gotten him back in this game. Pretty much, if getting the expansion first didn't win out, having my army there and entrapping all of his troops and all of his workers pretty much finished him off slowly in a nice slow little grind there. Now his army's right there. What I'm going to start doing is sort of playing at his defenses, and the way I tend to do that is bring one of my medevacs a little closer. As you see, I'm sort of spotting his attack here. I think this is pretty much what saved me. I didn't know he was going to drop Dark Templars, but I knew that he had units in the area, so I knew I had to have a sufficient amount of forces to counter some sort of harassment action. He brought out those stalkers so he could kill my medevac. Good times. But yeah, one thing that played in my favor here is that I'm playing at his defenses, so my medevac moves up just a little bit so my tanks can see his cannons and his forge and his gateway up there, and they start destroying it. Now, he has to try and stop this, and the only way he can do that is bringing his army down. Now, why he didn't blink down with his stalkers and come from a different angle, or possibly use his void prison to try and circumvent that whole area, or even maybe try to harass me, I'm not sure why he didn't do that. But he ended up kind of sending his troops straight into my army. He actually does send 2 Dark Templars down to attack both my tanks there. It was a nice small victory for him in the battle. There they are, just kind of sitting there. They've destroyed everything at the front of his base. He's already lost 1 production building, and he has almost no resources left aside from what he's been currently producing. Now, one thing I do when I notice DTs, I don't panic anymore. I used to panic because things just kind of disappear, and it's like, oh crap. So now when I see things getting damaged and disappearing, I go, oh, it's time for a scan. That way anything that's there can actually take care of it. And I see my SCVs popping there, and I'm like, oh boys, let's bring the military over. Unfortunately, I selected everyone and their grandmother to try and attack this guy, including my tank, who has to barrel all the way around there. But he was down, and he didn't build any DTs for another second there, and when he did, he tried to take out my 2 tanks at the bottom right there. So let's look at the general macro play going on. So his harassments aren't working to try and get rid of my macro, and at this point I have 2 expansions. I have expanded to a 3rd. I'm starting to rebuild some workers. I have 121 supply, and most of it's filled up. He has 82 supply, and he really can't build any more units. And if he does, he's taking away from his resource pool, which is actually really, really dwindling right now. If you'll see in some of the frames coming up, he doesn't really have many more resources left to mine. And so he's going to try in a desperate effort to make another base up here pretty soon, but he waited way too long. My army's way too big, and yeah, my tech is pretty high. There's no way he can really catch up at this point. Now I have to add, every once in a while I find a player who pulls off a fluke. Recently I had a string of losses, and one of those losses was a guy who, as I was destroying his base, warped in his mothership. I had no anti-air at the time. My Vikings were all in my base, and I couldn't send them forward yet. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just back off. I was still winning. I had troops everywhere on the map. I had map control. What ended up happening is he sent his mothership in with all of his troops and just kind of blinked them all up into my base, and I couldn't destroy his troops. My Vikings killed the mothership just in time for me to see this massive army just killing everything inside my base. It sucked. But you know what? It happens sometimes. Unfortunately for Bizob here, it didn't happen for him, and I'm starting to annihilate his base. There go the Dark Templars. They've taken care of my tanks, but I scan and I'm getting rid of them. Now this is a pretty evenly matched battle. The only reason I really stood a chance here is because I had just enough medevacs to keep my troops healed. And because they're focusing on my medevacs, they can't focus on my army. That's the awesome dilemma that you put the enemy in when you use medevacs, marines, and marauders in any capacity at all. You add tanks to that, and now they're being blasted in half while they're trying to kill your units. It's beautiful. Now I have a whole bunch of marauders still alive, killing a whole bunch of stalkers. This was a bad matchup for him. My unit composition was just too good at the time. Now I'm sure at around this time there was a collective groan on the other screen of the player I was facing. Mr. Bizob there has less workers, less army supply, less total units in general. I have double everything that he has at this point, including supply. There he goes. He's sending his workers to an expansion to be built on the upper right part of the map. He'll get his workers there. I only managed to kill one with my ghost. I kind of wanted to really fire the coup de grace shot by dropping a nuke, and I'm sure that alerted him pretty quickly there, so he ended up killing my ghost because I hadn't finished cloaking yet. You can see it's up on the queue right there, about to finish. And there that goes. But he realizes at this point that I can rebuild my army faster than he can rebuild his entire force, or make any strategy, or pretty much do anything. The only thing he has queued up right now is a Nexus, and that's pretty bad. There you got some stalkers going out, but my entire army is there, and there's nothing he can do about it, unfortunately. There he goes, he blinks. If he had done that earlier, he might have been able to do some damage. And with that, he has left no GG. Not sure if it was a rage quit or not, again, and there he goes. That's the end of the game. Once again, decent macro beats out micro to win the day. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe and keep on playing out there. Good luck and have fun.